Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. With first-hand lessons learned from those who have gone before, this podcast is designed to assist and inspire anyone interested in pursuing a medical career in rural and regional Australia.
Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Nicole Goodman.
Imagine living the rural doctor dream, being of service to your community while running your own farm. That's the ambition of Dr. Dominic Horne, who is now training to be an anaesthetist at Wagga Wagga Base Hospital in New South Wales. His journey includes performing radiation therapy in Newcastle and a placement in Tamworth, which isn't too far from his family farm in Wee Waa. And he says his preference for the rural doctor lifestyle has made him a better clinician because he has more proximity to specialist mentors from a variety of disciplines. He starts by explaining to Jeff Waters how he's ended up training in Wagga Wagga.
I've taken a long way around to get into medicine, Jeff, I suppose, first and foremost. But that was by way of a career in radiation therapy first, and spent a bit of time down in Newcastle doing that and then back into medical school. But more recently, I've spent some time out at Tamworth Hospital up in the northwest, and that was closer to home for me. So a couple of years out there, mainly working in, did my sort of pre-vocational training and mainly spent in emergency and intensive care. And then I've come down to Wagga this year for a job for the last 12 months and spent that in, again, intensive care and anaesthetics. So that's what's brought me down to Wagga, and it's been a really good move for me, and it's a really good hospital and a really good town to work in, so I haven't regretted it whatsoever.
What do you consider have been the highlights of your internship or medical training so far, and what's been the most challenging?
Mate, I think, Jeff, that the highlights and the challenges somewhat have gone together. I've been quite lucky, and I think you get that working in rural centres like Tamworth and Wagga, with the proximity to how close I've worked with some of our consultant staff in most of the departments that I've worked in. So I've been really lucky to have some really good mentors and been able to work really closely in sort of some high stress situations, which has been really challenging, but that's definitely been the biggest reward for me. So a lot of those situations where you're dealing with major trauma, or you're dealing with, in the care of patients and families where a loved one might be in their last days of their life, or things like that. Now, that a lot of that sort of stuff is really challenging, both medically and emotionally, and understandably for the family, but as well as staff and clinicians. So I think that's probably been, for me, the highlights, as well as been presented some of the biggest challenges. So I think, I've been really lucky to get a lot of exposure to that, and that's been because I've had really good mentors that have really got me involved in both of those two places that I mentioned.
What advice would you give to a medical student considering a rural internship?
Jeff, I think that you just bite the bullet and go ahead and do it. I don't know if there's pearls of wisdom so much, but if I could impose upon anybody to say that, you definitely won't regret it whatsoever. And I think that you'll be by far a better clinician at the end of it. I think the reasons why I've already touched on: the experienced consultant staff that you work really closely with, and you get thrown into some situations that you just wouldn't get that sort of exposure and experience with, I don't believe, out in some of the bigger tertiary hospitals. So you take on more responsibility. You've always got oversight from experienced consultant staff, but you develop really close work relationships as well as personal relationships, and make some really good friends with some people that perhaps you wouldn't get that in bigger tertiary places, where you make some really good mates, that people that mentor you not only in the workplace but outside of the workplace as well, and can really have a profound impact on your career. And I think that for me that's definitely been the case. And I've been really fortunate that I've run into some fantastic consultant staff in medicine, but also a lot of the staff in other disciplines that work within the hospital. And I think that all of those relationships that you develop, if you develop those sort of things early in your career, makes you a much better clinician, and you enjoy the workplace a hell of a lot more. And I think anybody that is willing to put themselves in a situation where you're going to be open to those sort of things and you want to be the number one, the best clinician that you can be, but number two, have a really enjoyable workplace and make some really strong personal relationships with the people that you work with, and that just leads to better patient care. And I think that would be my selling point for anybody that's entertaining the idea of going rural for any of their training, but particularly in their first couple of years out.
You've outlined how you gain a wider breadth of experience than perhaps a city trainee would. Where will that place you, do you think, in 5 to 10 years' time?
For me, I've been quite fortunate. Critical care very early in my career was somewhere that I was going to go and follow a career path down. It wasn't quite straightforward which branch of critical care. Whether that was, for anyone listening, that's either emergency medicine, intensive care or anaesthetics. I quite enjoy all three, but my experience up to this point and I suppose some of the mentors I've had around me, I've sort of made the decision to pursue a career in anaesthetics at the moment. And so in 5 to 10 years' time, obviously there's barrier exams and all the training process that you need to go through. And for me, ideally, I'll be finished my anaesthetic training and looking to come back to a rural sort of referral centre like a Tamworth, a Dubbo, Wagga, Orange, those sort of places where it's got services to provide for the outlying areas, but you're still in a rural setting. And I think for me, that's probably where I want to end up. In that time, I'd like to get some exposure to both retrieval medicine and perhaps some more intensive care. But, all of those things are a work in progress as we go, mate. But I think that doing anaesthetics, perhaps with some intensive care or retrieval medicine, would be ideal for me in a place like that, a similar sort of size and service provision to those sort of places that I've talked about. And, I'm off a farm originally, so the plan for me would be to go back and be on a little place of my own, I'd imagine. But all of that's a work in progress.
So which organisations, memberships or networks have supported you and how have they done that?
Organisation-wise, I've been in contact with some great people. Initially, I was introduced to the Rural Doctors Network because I had some mates that had gone through before me on a Rural Doctors cadetship. Having gone back to university and with a previous career and wanting to go back to the bush, there was a couple of attractions there for that cadetship for me, and that was, number one, being linked in with some clinicians that were back out around home and expanding that network of doctors that both work in the bush and have that same interest, and sort of linking in with some like-minded people. And then they offered some financial support, which supported me through my last couple of years in medical school. And as a result, I went back to Tamworth for my first couple of years out in training. And for me, that was always the plan because my family are 2 or 3 hours west of Tamworth. So they've been fantastic. So Anna and Chris from the RDN and Lauren Cohen's involved there as well. They were just a big support, not only through the cadetship, but we get on quite well with all of them. And from that, what followed on was that I ended up becoming a member of the Rural Doctors Association, which is sort of the peak body for rural doctors in New South Wales post-graduation. And I've ended up becoming the New South Wales Rural Doctors Association representative and sitting on the committee over the last couple of years, sort of bringing rural doctors in trainings issues around the state to the committee and talking to the ministry, which has been a real learning experience for me. And there's some fantastic people involved, that Charles Enville, the president, as well as all of the management committee, and Alicia Hargreaves, who is just does a power of work. They've been unbelievable. So I've been quite lucky to be involved in that organisation, and they've only helped me move forward in how you approach things about issues in rural medicine, and provided an avenue for me to try and do that for other rural doctors, and how people are interested in moving that forward so we can improve our training in the bush, as well as getting people to stay and come back after further training. So, mate, that's probably been the organisations that have supported me the most and the ones that I've been involved in.
Well, it sounds like you're acting as a country doctor from the country. It sounds like you're fulfilling an important conduit role there between city people and the bush. What other professional goals have you achieved so far?
I suppose it was always a goal to get on a training program, and I sort of touched on that. Been involved with a number of universities over the course of both my time as a radiation therapist and coming back to do medicine. Both UNE up in Armidale as well as Newcastle and Notre Dame down here in Wagga, both in a faculty perspective and helping with some curriculum stuff. That's been really good for me, but that's probably my roles with the RDA has probably taken up a large proportion of my time outside of medicine, and something that I'm really proud of, trying to advocate for people in the bush, not only doctors but patients, and trying to get as many young doctors both to come out here, stay, and then trying to get the pathways and programs for them to be able to stay and continue to train and live here, because I think once people come out, and if there's opportunities for them to come out and stay, more people will stay, and that'll only improve service provision out in places like this.
That's Dr. Dominic Horne, trainee anaesthetist working at Wagga Wagga Base Hospital. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening.
Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.